So day 19 of October, I watched The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the original 1977 film, for the first time. And I've always wanted to watch this one because even though I didn't know anything about this except for it was like a slasher type of movie, I knew that while watching the Friday the 13th Crystal Lake Chronicles complete history of the Friday the 13th franchise, they mentioned that from part 2 that this literally is the same outfit as the killer in The Town of the Dreaded Sundown. And watching The Town of the Dreaded Sundown, I can totally see that. It's literally the same bag head mask that like he wears, like Jason does in part 2. So I think that's really cool, and I think that this movie, for me, like, I don't know what to say about this movie at first, because I'm very mixed on it. There's a lot of things that is interesting about it, because the movie starts out, and the whole movie, they have this weird narration where there's literally a narrator, like, saying what's happening in the movie, and it's so strange, because it makes this feel like a silly infomercial, and it made it just seem so awkward with this narration during scenes that are happening. I don't get what was with the creative choice of the narration, but to be fair, I don't see many horror movies that ever do this. A movie all the way through did narration for the whole movie. I think that is, it's not something I liked, but it's something to note on being a different thing, and I think that is a cool standout, even though I don't enjoy that part of it. Like, the narration thing I think is weird, but it's just kind of awkward. It's a very awkward thing. And the score in this, speaking of Friday the 13th, is, at the beginning of the movie, very similar. And this came up before the first Friday the 13th movie, or part 2, so it's so weird seeing this score that sounds very much like Friday the 13th. But as the movie goes along, and this plays into the rest of the movie, the score and everything else, when the killer is not involved, is cheesy as shit. Like, this is a cheesy-ass movie. Like, in a way where the cheesiness ruins it. Like, I thought the moments with the killer is good. I like this killer character. Like, I think he's intimidating. The kills aren't too bad, but like, the moments with the killer are okay. And then every other scene is just so silly and so weird, but not in a fun way. Very extremely cheesy. The music score in this sounds like something like, it doesn't actually sound like this, but it reminds me of something like, say, the Three Stooges, where like it's got such silly music in it. That's the only example I can think of, that it's got such a silly score and such silly characters that it didn't do it in a way where it's like, say, Mad Men, which I watched recently, where it's really over the top, really silly with the acting, but like, I thought that was funny and fun. And this one, it's not very fun, even with the cheesiness. The cheesiness, I feel, is really out of place, like the narration. Very out of place. There's a scene where these cops all dress up as women, which, oh shocker, guys are dressed up as women in this movie. It was from 1977 though, so I guess that makes sense why it's such a big deal in the movie, but it's so silly. And then there's a scene between two guys, one guy's dressed as a woman, and the other guy's trying to grab his fake boob, and he's like, well, I gotta ask you a question, why is this one a little bigger than this one? And I don't know, like, lines like that should make me laugh, but I was like, I didn't think it was funny. And it's got that quirky, dumb music whenever it happens. And the whole movie, whenever the killer isn't involved, has such quirky, dumb music. And like I said, the killer is creepy. The way that this is a faceless killer. It's got a bag over its head, so it does have intimidation and it's scary. There's a moment in the movie where I actually did really enjoy this moment, where like, there's this girl who gets shot by the killer, and in the place she lives, she's got all this corn maze outside, where like she runs into the cornfield and like is trying to get away from this killer. And I thought it was actually pretty intense and actually pretty not too bad. Like, that was pretty good. But there aren't enough scenes of that. It's mostly just really silly and over the top. And then the ending where like there's a train separating the killer and the ranger and the cops, and like they're trying to shoot him, and they keep shooting him between the train, and then they eventually shoot the killer and just goes, phew, just flies up in the air, falls down, and then they have this awkward ending where it's like it shows a zoom in on the pond on this big swamp, and it's like nobody would ever go down. Like the narration says, nobody would ever go down there, but the killer was never found again, and like then it shows this thing kind of like how, say, American Graffiti did it at the end, where it showed the characters and what they do after the movie. In this one, it does the same kind of thing, but it's just kind of dumb. It's like, oh, these characters became this and this, but these characters had nothing to them in the movie, so I didn't care. There was really no main character in this movie at all. And with slashers, sometimes they can get away with it, and I can be fine with that. But in this one, nobody was interesting and nobody was fun. So this is a really mixed bag. And honestly, I hear the remake is actually really good, so I need to watch the remake. I bet it'll take itself way more seriously than this one. And not to say, like, a horror movie cannot take itself seriously and I can't enjoy it. Like, I do enjoy a lot of cheesy-ass horror movies, but this one, it's got such a strange tone to it where I didn't laugh, I didn't think it was funny, and it's silly, but it never felt that entertaining to me. So, besides the killer being a cool, creepy killer, like the moments with him alone is actually pretty good when it's serious, but whenever it's dumb, it's really dumb with cheesy moments. But he's totally fine. So, overall, I'd say this is just kind of a miss for me. Like, it's not awful, but it's not that great. It's got a couple okay things with the killer, but everything else is so cheesy. It's making me yawn. Everything is just so cheesy in the movie, besides the moments with the killer, where it's actually intimidating and scary, but everything else is just dumb. So yeah, I didn't really love this one at all. I didn't think it was that great. So this was kind of a miss for me, but I don't know. I'm going to see the remake soon. I'll try to watch the remake, because I really am curious to see how good that one is, at least in my eyes, whenever I watch it. So overall, this one was a pretty forgettable mixed bag.